What's up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Going to give you guys all a few minutes to get on, because I know this is a very important broadcast, especially if you're watching this on the replay. That's why I want to make sure that, we just come out of the gate and we let you know that, that we're here tonight for a very, very, very important reason. Normally our shows are very motivational and inspirational and funny and have a message and everything. And, what's funny is that Scott and I have the logo where it says asking the tough questions. And to be honest, and I'm sure Scott would agree with me, I'm going to bring him on here in a second, is that the questions that we ask are tough. Yes. But tonight in this conversation that we're going to be having with so many of you out there who have reached out to us and asked us, hey, can I have a spot on your show? Can I come on there and say something? Can I share something? That takes the tough questions to an entirely new level. I put it in the post that I feel this interview is going to be one of the most interesting, challenging, emotional, vulnerable, uncomfortable interviews, discussions, chats that I've ever had, publicly. Let me rephrase that, publicly. We have these conversations in our house. We have these conversations with our friends, in our close circle. We ask questions like, what does this mean? Or what do you think about this? But tonight, myself and Scott are pleased to be able to bring, some unique individuals that are in the world today that are sick and tired of being sick and tired and want to come on here and share with us their perspectives, their situations that they go through, and really educate and enlighten us all of how we can be better people. We can be a better country. We can be a better world through unification and through understanding. I always say, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And that's what tonight's about. Honestly, for me, my goal is to not talk and to listen as much as I possibly can. And I just want to say this for both Scott and I. I'm going to bring him on here in a second. He's making sure our guests are coming in. There's no perfect words to say. There's no perfect way to say something. There is only your heart. And that's what my Black friends have told me this week, because I've said, God, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I do the wrong thing? I'm really trying to dig in so much deeper than I ever have. I've listened to so many different interviews and so many different people coming out with their perspectives. And 1 minute I'm like, well, that kind of makes sense. And then I listen to something else and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, but I thought it made sense. But now I know more sense because, like my friend David, I told him about somebody and he was like, no, you do not want to think like her. Check this guy out. And I watched him last night and I was like, holy shit, I'm so glad that he was there to tell me to pay attention to this person and not that person. So that's what this is about. This is just about coming from the heart and really having that discussion publicly that can enrich our lives, that can cause us to do things differently, can cause the massive shift and the change that we need in the world today. The most beautiful thing about what's going on, at least for my lifetime, is the fact that what I keep hashtagging is the world is watching, the world is watching, the world is watching. And that is such an enormously beautiful, awesome thing in the world that everybody's just like, no, we're not going to do it anymore. And the way we stop doing it, the way we've always done it, is the fact that we stand up and we use our voice and we use our platform. And for me, at least, I'm not going to speak for Scott. We're still coordinating the guests to get in. At least for me, it's time to use my platform. It's time to use my voice. It's time to take what it is that I want to do in the world and take my legacy to the next level, to create the massive shift, especially and most importantly for our children, my son, your daughter, your grandkids, grandkids. How awesome would it be to look back on your life and say, I was part of something so fucking huge back in 2020. Remember back in 2020 when the car still were on the ground and, we didn't have, phones in our head, they're going to look back in the history books at this time and they're going to be like, wow, look at all those people. Look at all those souls joining together and saying no more inequality, no more stupid laws, no more of this, making sure that there's justice, making sure there's checks and balances that actually make sense. That's our time right now to be able to do this, to stand together, one and all, Black, white, straight, gay, Republican, Democrat, whatever fucking label you want to put on it. At the end of the day, we're souls. We're souls here having a human existence. And, think about what it is that your impact in the world is going to be. Think about that. And I just want to share with you that, please contribute, ask your questions in the comments, listen to what they're saying, feel free. That's what this is about. This is about really opening up and saying, hey, even like, okay, do you prefer, there's just so many different things. I don't want to use any examples right now, but I want to bring on my brother from another mother, Mr. Scott Goyette. Scott, how are you doing tonight, brother?
I'm doing good. Like you said, we're just juggling right now, trying to get everybody on board, people getting off work, they want to join us. And we've got some good people who are going to be here tonight. We're just trying to get them in. So everything you said is right on point. I mean, both you and I, for the last few hours, of course, are trying to get our energy to where it needs to be, because all week we've had a very heavy heart. We've been sitting in a place where I'm a very affected human. I'm definitely an empath or sensitive or, connected, whatever word you want to use. So my sleep has been off, and I've been sleeping like a baby through COVID. We're home. I've been going for bike rides, doing all these good things. And my brain's just been swirling, and my heart's been displaced, no question. And I've connected with a lot of friends, who are Black, who are, friends from current parts of my life or old parts of my life, and just listening to their thoughts and some things that you never talked about. We have a lot of deep conversations about personal development, a lot of things, but some of the talks I think that we might have missed with certain friends. And I've just heard a lot of stories all week, things that, hey, Scott, you remember that time this happened? Well, here's what I was thinking. I'm like, whoa, are you serious? And I know we both heard a lot of it, and we're engaged in social media, we're listening to it, we're hearing it by phone, we're talking to friends in person, but we've got to just start having those conversations out in the open all the time, every time. There's no reason not to. And, we can go back to the thing that I always talk about nonstop of oneness, but our separation has just become so lengthy that, we're othering like crazy, like that person, that person, that person. And I think Black Lives Matter, that whole concept of Black Lives Matter, is such an awesome opportunity for us to address and heal one component of society that has been oppressed. And when we see that this group rise up and be treated fairly, I have a feeling what's going to happen is we're going to go, I've got some things to say that I felt like I was hurt too. Let's do one at a time. We're not going to all lives. Let's heal this group. And then what's going to happen is exponentially, we're going to heal all of us. And hopefully that's where we can start today. Is Heather on, by the way? Or?
I don't see Heather, but one thing we wanted, and thank you, Scott, for that. I mean, it's like we share a brain half the time, and we check and balance each other. So thank you for that. And one thing we also wanted to let you know is that both Scott and I have podcasts. We have our individual podcasts. That's how we came together. We're both on the Speaking to the Heart podcast network, and we want you guys to check that out, because it comes to you in the form of dealing with mental illness and dealing with challenges and chronic pain and getting your attitude in the right place. And my show is raw and unscripted, and it's on the Speaking to the Heart network. And I've been there for, I don't know, a year and a half or something like that. And, it's just a beautiful place to go check out, because there's different types of shows for different types of situations going on. And through this, we're looking at how can we expand that reach? How can we expand that mission to really be there for people who are in trouble, people who are in need a voice and a platform to talk to. And Scott, I'll let you talk about your show, but we just wanted to let you know that that's what brings us all to you, is that Speaking to the Heart, that Phoenix Rising, the fact that we all need to hold each other accountable, hold each other and listen to each other and help each other.
Yeah. And it's very interesting too, because everything that we're talking about, anything we coach on or we speak about, we're practicing what we're preaching. My show is called The Awakening You, and it's saying that all the answers lie within. So it's getting you to step up and realize that you are your own guru. Now, does that mean that you don't need a coach, or there's not somebody that can support you in finding those answers? We're not saying that. We all need support. And that's exactly why Chris and I came together. One day I just said, there's this guy, I'm watching his show on the same podcast network. We don't even know each other. I'm like, hey, dude, we should do something together. And 2 minutes later, we're doing this show because we were both saying the same thing, that strength comes through connection and comes through numbers. The answers lie within, but what the answer is there's no separation. So here's what ends up happening. Once you start to embrace the awakening process and you say, wait a minute, I do have a direct conduit and a source to creator. And once we feel that channel to creator, we start saying, what I need to do more of is not so much think that I can do everything on my own, is understand that the answers lie within, and then take those answers and say, Chris, what perspective are you seeing? And so then his answers and my answers now become even more important. So together we become stronger. Then we get our community that we've created, and we see you guys bringing stuff, and you teach us, and we teach you, and together we get stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's what we're preaching. That's what we're practicing. That's why we're bringing these guests on. We want to take this community. We want to take everything that we have found from our perspective and share those perspectives and grow those perspectives and learn and become this amazing being together. And it's pretty much that simple. I mean, it's that complex and that simple all at once.
It is. And I put you full screen because I wanted to let you know Sean was having, it looks like his device isn't recognized. So okay. I just messaged him to let him know, and that might've been a text message for you. So I'll go ahead and put you backstage and you can figure that out. And then I'll say something nice. Or do you want to try to fix that?
Yeah, let me take care of that with Sean. One last thing I want to say too is we're looking for people to help support this mission and this vision right now with Speaking of the Heart Podcast Network, volunteers, creative writers. We've got lots of opportunities. So connect with Scott. I mean, Chris, there you go. I said Scott again. That's the word of the day. Chris or I, and we'd love to work with you and on our mission together.
Absolutely. Cool. And thank you for mentioning that, Scott. I will let you deal with that. And just one more word on that. Shane is in the house. Shane is our producer. He is the founder of the Speaking of the Heart Podcast Network. So thank you for being here, Shane. You know, it really is about, life's toughest challenges, mind, body, and spirit. And, while we're getting the guests situated, sometimes there's technical stuff that's going on. I just want to thank each and every one of you. I mean, seriously, whether you're watching this live with us right now, thank you so much for being here. I know it's Friday night. If you're watching it on the replay, thank you. I mean, seriously, my heart goes out to everyone and thinking about everything that you're going through. So being here and sharing this and being a part of the conversation, I know is bold and brave. And that's why we're here. For us, Scott and I was honestly, do I want to go down that road? Do I want to be that voice? Do I want to, because, there's a lot of implications in that, and you can basically, offend certain people and all that other stuff. But, at the end of the day, you have to rise above. So thank you guys for being here. And I just want to, let's see if I can, we have a special guest. And she would like to come on. She was actually a guest of ours, a co-host of ours not too long ago. What's going on, Heather?
Hi, Chris. It's so wonderful to be with you. Thank you for opening up this sacred space to have these conscious conversations, and for inviting me to be here. I feel really honored and blessed to be here. Thank you.
No, we need your energy here, and that's why Scott said, let's go ahead and see what we can do, and start it off on a positive note, on a spiritual note, whatever, a positive energy note to have these tough conversations. So thank you for bringing that. I know you have something going on right now, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
I see Scott is still on the phone, so if there's something you'd like to say, I would love for you to share it with everybody.
Wow. So, as we all are experiencing such incredible intensity in our human experience at this time, and really having the gamut of emotions, the whole full spectrum of emotions. And I know some of us are feeling really overwhelmed and really confused, and maybe even feeling resistant to what is unfolding in our collective journey. I just want to invite us to drop in to our heart space as best we can in this moment. And for me, it is really helpful to actually place a hand on my heart, and that immediately sends a signal to our being that we are paying attention to the heart. And the heart is what connects all of us. I heard Scott mention the oneness, the unity, that our heart knows that we are one human family. And our heart knows that we are all here on the planet at this time to participate in tremendous healing and transformation of the human experience. And our heart knows that on a soul level, we chose to be here at this very moment in time because we want to participate in this healing that's happening, and that we are capable of the healing, or we wouldn't be here. And something that has come into my heart over the last couple of days is an awareness that as an embodied white person, that I am here to do the healing work that needs to be done, that only a white person can do, because of the lineage that I carry as a white person, and especially a white person that has grown up in the South, and my ancestors are from the South. They come from a long line of Southerners, and there is a lineage of ignorance. And I say that from the heart space, out of love and compassion, and speaking the truth of the ignorance of the damage that white privilege and white supremacy has done to people of color for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I have the capacity as an awakening white person to truly be the change that my ancestors were not able to be because of where they were at in their consciousness. But I am able to be it and do it. And I'm stepping up, and I'm willing to do the work. And I am incredibly grateful for the wake-up call that we are all experiencing right now, and the willingness of our brothers and sisters of color who are speaking out and sharing their truth and providing resources for us to do the unlearning that needs to be done, so we can truly co-create a world that is justice for all, that is equality for all, that is true liberty, liberation, freedom for all, peace, unity, sustainability, everything that our heart knows we desire for ourselves and for the generations to come. We have this opportunity right now. And it involves something that I call spiritual maturity, in that we get to be accountable for ourselves and accountable for history, and admit that we have, and I say we, white people and the lineage that we hold, we have done some tremendously horrific things out of ignorance and out of unconsciousness. So we get to be accountable for that, and we get to be the change that we desire to see in the world, and step up and do it and be it. And we can do it and be it. And again, Chris and Scott, I am so grateful for your courage to hold this space and have this conversation. Today is the Sagittarius full moon and lunar eclipse, and it's opening up a gateway cosmically for profound reset and recalibration. Literally, it's happening, that doorway's opening today. And I know you might not have consciously known that. I mean, you have these gatherings every Friday. So, but it's all aligning synchronistically. And so everything that we're discussing this evening and everything we're placing into the circle and our intentions to do the healing work is being amplified exponentially. And there are millions of people across the world today who are working with these energies to create the change that we desire to see. So I just invite everyone who is tuning into this, whenever you're tuning into it, to send yourself gratitude and appreciation for your willingness to be brave and to have spiritual maturity, and to come together and have these conversations and do the work that needs to be done, because we can do it. We can.
Wow, Heather,
Yeah.
that was beautiful. Thank you so much.
And that's why
Wow.
that's why I call it that. That's
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful way to start, the show. I mean, there's no other words.
Well, Well,
There's no
thank
other
you
way.
all.
I feel like I need to drive 35 minutes and give her a hug and then come right back. Is that okay? Can I do that?
No, I'm like hug deficient. I'm hug deficient.
Do I have to stay here? I'll get you later.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. Y'all are amazing. And I love you both. And I thank you. And we have some deep, deep work to do, but we're doing it together. And
yes.
it's time, and we're doing it, and we can do it. And so I just invite everybody. I know that both of these beautiful souls and everybody that's going to be coming on the show are available to connect with beyond this space. I am as well. Just know you have the support. And like I mentioned, our relatives of color are putting so many resources out there, like action steps, like very practical action steps that we can be taking. Yes, Pamela, we can be the change. Like things that we can do. It's very practical, and being willing to do that inner work, that transformative work. That's not easy. But like I mentioned a little bit ago, that's why we're here. That's why we signed up and said, I want to be on planet Earth in 2020, because I am ready and willing to be a part of this shift and this healing.
And we're at the top of the roller coaster. There's no refunds. So
That's right.
Buckle your
That's
seatbelt.
right.
We are going for a ride. Heather, again, thank you so much. I know you have to get back to your dinner party.
Yeah.
Love you. Appreciate
Love you all.
Have
Thank
a
you.
fantastic time, and we will talk soon for sure.
All right. All right.
Thank you for your magic.
Thank you for your magic. Wow. Okay. That was a great pick, Scott. That's a good way to get things started off. My energy's feeling better. I know we're having some technical difficulties, and I know that we have Arvin ready to go. How do you want to jump into this, man? I mean,
So
there's
real
so
quick,
much to say.
so Sean's getting a computer. He's going to be in. What I'll do is I want to share one thing, because something was resonating with what Heather said, and then we'll bring Arvin in. But I want to share one thing. There's no question that some of the things that she said might have been triggering to some people. The word ignorance, to be called ignorant just doesn't feel good, but that's why we're here right now. We're here for the honest conversation, the words, the triggers, the feelings, things that might not make us feel good, because growth comes in discomfort, not in comfort. So if you felt uncomfortable with those words, I'd like to simplify those a little bit and reframe them a little bit. So we live in this existence right now mostly from what we perceive as our conscious mind. So we think that we see things, we touch things, we feel things, and we do things. And so we've got our senses. What's happened is we've got three components of our psychic mind. And so we've got our conscious mind, our conscious thoughts, our subconscious, and the superconscious, which might be called to some people God, other people creator, other people universe. What has happened is our subconscious has become very fogged up as a lens. And so what I challenge you guys to do is think of this. In your conscious mind, how you're perceiving this world, just imagine that if you literally were out of touch, when we call it separation, if you're out of touch with creator or source or the superconscious, the further you get from that, the more discomfort you get, and the more illusion of clinging to comfort you get. So I want you guys to start thinking of this. All we're doing in this process is wiping the lens of our subconscious. It's not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. It's a thing. So as we go through this right now, if you feel upset, if somebody attacks me and says, Scott, you're full of crap, you're racist, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, what have I missed that created that perception? And I'm going to start cleaning off of my subconscious. And eventually what that's going to do is provide clarity to the superconscious, to the oneness to creator, which is what we've been talking about the whole time. So during this process, if something upsets you, if you don't feel good, if you don't like something I say, Chris says, Arvin says, Sean says, stay. Do not walk away. Stay. And just start touching up. Start touching up. Us included. I can't go anywhere because I would probably signed up for the show, but you guys can leave if you don't. So without further ado, I want to invite a really good friend of mine on the show. His name is Arvin Poole. His foundation is called Day with Daddy. I believe that's the name of it. I screwed it up the other night on the invite. But he's a wonderful guy. I used to play basketball with him. Every time I connect with him, it's just positive energy. and he's a beautiful human being. And so let's bring Arvin on if we can, Chris.
Arvin, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up,
Good to
everybody?
meet you.
Oh,
Hey,
he's got
Chris.
the
Good to
phone.
meet you, Chris. Hey,
Good to
Scott.
meet you finally.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
We can hear you, we can see you, and it's beautiful that you're here. So thank you so much for being here and sharing this time with us.
Thank
Did
you,
I
guys.
get it right? Day with Daddy?
That was perfect. That was perfect, Scott. That was right on.
What's Day with Daddy? What's Day with Daddy all about?
Tell us about that.
Oh, do you have something other audio on?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Does he have other audio on?
Can you hear us, Arvin?
Oh, there we go. Sorry. I was broadcasting on a different channel. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. I was just
There we
curious
go.
with Scott's introduction of you. What is Day with Daddy?
Yeah, so I actually Day with Daddy was conceptualized back in 2012. So for everyone who's in Austin, you are familiar with South by Southwest. I'm an avid, frequent visitor or participant of South by. I've engaged and I've been a speaker, volunteer. But in 2012, I'm a divorced father. Went through a divorce in 2011. And so that year later, I have two girls. They are now 13 and almost 16. But back then they were little girls. And so every weekend we would get together. There would be the Google search trying to find things to do other than Chuck E. Cheese. And so in my mind, I was like, excuse my language. I was like, damn, I wish there was something to do for dads, just for one day, like for a Saturday. What are there to do for dads? And so since that Saturday, I rebelled against going back to Chuck E. Cheese for the 12th time. And I said, I'm going to come up with something that I can help other dads to do on at least one day out of the week if you're a divorced dad. So that's how Day with Daddy was founded.
Wow, that is beautiful.
Is Chuck E. Cheese even is it legal after COVID? That ballroom cannot be good.
Oh,
It can't be legal, and it's definitely not sanitary for sure. Definitely a place where you have sanitizer in every pocket of your pants. So
I'm gonna pass.
And for me, a muzzle to stop parent, want to go tell parents, hey, take care of your little monsters.
Right, exactly.
But I'm glad they have beer. I mean, that's all that matters. I mean, just have a few, and then it's like, yeah, go ahead and play asteroids or something like that.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Arvin, how are you?
Yeah. I will say this. I am pretty exhausted, but not from all these things. I mean, believe it or not, let me pause for a moment. Okay. First of all, I want to say this is probably the first time in my lifetime where I have seen this gathering of people on all sides to sort of come together to fight against something that I've seen all my life. So I'll give you a little background. I grew up in Montgomery. I was born and raised in Montgomery, Alabama, the heart and city and place where civil rights was actually a lot of things happen in Montgomery. My family is from Selma, Montgomery. My mom was born in Birmingham. So I lived this as a child, but it wasn't exposed to me as my mom had experienced it growing up. So she did her best to try to not shield it from us, but educate us in a way where it was a positive movement for us as children. And anything that was considered adversary to us or adversary to us, like things that would be a negative, she turned it into a positive. If people looked at us funny, we say, hey, they're just interested because you have beautiful black skin. I mean, and so she always tried to flip the script to where it never became something that I grew up in my heart, and I think Scott knows this. I love every color. I mean, I had the chance to travel the world, 10 years in the Air Force. I've been to China, Brazil. I lived in a lot of places. I've been to a lot of places. So I love people, right? What I don't like is when people smile at you and then they turn around and you see that guy? What is up with him? I don't mind the inquisitive part, but don't, turn it around as if I'm somebody, on another planet. Look here, I'm on Earth just like you are, right? And so I've always been in places where I've kind of been that one and only person, you know, going to University of Alabama, major in engineering, going to University of Arizona, you know, finished my MBA there, IBM, as a manager there. So these places that I've been in my life, I'd never looked at like white, black. What I looked at is people who were all there to help others. But then when you're exposed to it, you're like, how do you deal with it? If your mom, I grew up in a single parent home, how do you deal with it now when your mom always made things positive? So shout out to my mom if you're watching. I think I invited her on here. I love you to death, but
Mom,
she did her best to make sure that her children, you know, grew up in an environment where we were able to thrive and to always love everyone. So she didn't really like the negativity.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Strong mom. I mean, thank God for mom.
Absolutely.
I hope she's here. Hi, mom. Thank you for being here. Thank you for raising a wonderful son.
My mom shows up sometime too, Arvin. It's her new thing to watch what we're talking about. I feel like I'm almost like I got to be careful.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, and by the way, in case Pretty Face over here didn't say anything to you, language is fine on this show. I mean, I'm the F-bomb guy on this show. I mean,
okay.
I just speak from the heart. And if people don't like it, then I wish them well and go find something else to figure out. So it's no holds bar here. I mean, it's however you want to say it, whatever you want to say. That's the shtick that we do here. We just speak from the heart.
I may not drop the F-bomb, but I'll give it to you real and raw. So
no worries.
I'll be very candid. Absolutely.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
So Arvin, you know, like I know that you've traveled extensively and you had a lot of experiences. We both have. You know, we've been able to see different perspectives, which makes things easier. I mean, when you see people, you're like, hey, you're a person, and we lose that separation. We get more into the connectedness where we see every person's the same.
Right.
What are you feeling? Because again, from my perspective, as somebody who's traveled, who met a lot of people all over the world that I literally love. Like if you followed our travels last year, every single place I went, I said the same thing. Oh my God, these people are so cool, and this food is so good. It was always food and people.
Food and people, right.
So
Absolutely. I'll just say, you know, growing up, I mentioned Montgomery is my home city. Then I went off to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I'm a huge football fan, by the way. So any diehard SEC fan, we really don't see black, white. We see crimson and we see white. And if you're orange, and if you're orange and blue, that's our enemy, you know? So those are the moments that I really enjoyed. And it wasn't until I would probably say I was probably like 19 or 20 years old. I joined a fraternity when I was like 18 or somewhere. Kappa Alpha Psi was the name of the fraternity. Still in the fraternity, by the way. But there was this, I remember having a intramural basketball game, and it was our fraternity against another fraternity. And so our fraternity was majority, like predominantly black. And this fraternity that we were playing ball was predominantly white. But we were cool, but we really didn't like talk to each other. You know, it wasn't like we hated each other. Just like it was a competitive thing. You're all guys, you're jockeying for, you know, the girls or whatever. But when it came down to being on the basketball court, we became blood, like literally blood brothers, meaning that we were there for one cause, and that was to win a game. And so I feel like it's okay to be different. It's okay to be uniquely diverse from other people that you see. It's okay to see someone different, because that's, to me, is what makes you appreciate things, right? And so that was sort of my first sort of introduction to going to like this majority white campus, coming from an all black high school. And I was like, wow, I went from 90% black to 95% white. How do I fit in? But it was those moments of meeting people individually and not stereotyping one person off of what a group of people or a collective group of people were posed as, or even as what they did. And so my travels allowed me to then take what I had learned in college to now say, you know what, if I go to Japan or I go to China or I go to Brazil, guess what? they're fighting the same fight in their countries. Now it's my opportunity to really embrace their culture. So why can't we do that here? Why can't we do that in the United States? Why is it so difficult for us to break those barriers and really, like Scott and I, we met at Lifetime Fitness. We were basketball buddies from the day we met. And I remember always wanting to pick up Scott because he was always the tallest one. I was the outside shooter, but I didn't look at it that way. I didn't look at it as this white guy who could shoot ball, you know, who could actually dunk and all that. I looked at it as this guy who was genuinely, he cared about people. And it was me really breaking open my world to him, sharing my life and him sharing his life to make me appreciate that relationship. So I try to do that with everyone, but there are times where sometimes you don't know how to read people and you don't want to overstep your bounds. I'm from Alabama, so we love to hug, not so much in COVID world, but when I moved around, you can't just assume that everyone wants to be that close to you, or even they may have some other things they have experienced where they're fearful of. So you just can't approach people that way. So as I got older, I think what I have been able to learn from my experience is everyone's not like me. Everyone's not like Scott, you know, and Chris, I haven't had a chance to meet you, but maybe everyone's not like you either, but you have to be able to let your guard down and allow people into your life and drop the fear. Drop the, oh, what are they going to think about me? I'm black walking into a place that's all white. Like, you're a beautiful person. Like, Arvin, you're a beautiful dude. Like, and I don't mean that as in beautiful, pretty, but I mean, you're a beautiful black guy. You're a human being just like they are. And if the minute that you put your guard up is when racism may seem to like unconsciously start, is because you're fearful of what other people may think of you. And now you begin to get on the defensive. So I've always tried to do my best. I don't care what environment I'm in. I always smile. I always say hi, even when those people that I smile and say hi to, and it's more than I expected in Texas, but I sometimes don't get highs back. And it's typically the older generation, not the younger generation. So I don't know if I answered your question, Scott. I try to take this with positivity. I think the thing that really has frustrated me in this last 2 weeks, and I want to get down into some more of the rawness behind my feelings, is I'm very, very angry of what's going on in our country. And this is something that's not new. I think now as an adult with 2 kids, I'm even more angry because I don't know how to have like real conversations with my 6, 15, and 13-year-old of why this is happening. I can only tell her that this has been going on much longer than I've been on this earth. And there are just certain people who are ingrained to look at blacks as something, as a subordinate or someone who's they're less of who they are. And that doesn't change how you should treat people, Linnea. That doesn't change how you should treat people, McKenna, because everyone, if you take time to learn about them and their story, you can influence them. So that's what I try to always instill, not just in my girls, but also anyone that I'm mentoring or coaching, is that I don't care how angry my heart is right now. I can't hate you because you're white. I can't hate you because of the things that happen. I can hate the things that are happening and say, you know what, we got to put a stop to this. But prayer, being vigilant, silence, and all those things are great. But until you put an action plan for reform, we're going to end up seeing the same. I'll probably be back on your show again in 5 years. And unfortunately, I don't want this to happen in the same sense. And this is where we're getting a lot of the visibility, but where I feel like most people that I have talked to, the people who have been silent for years, they're now vocalizing their concern. They're angry. All my friends, Chinese, Hispanic, African-American, Black, whatever word you want to use for me, African-American, Black, I'll accept them all. But everyone is angry at what is going on. So not to bring in politics, your vote is very, 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 very powerful.
Please.
But your vote, right. But your vote alone is not going to solve this. You have to take action. And this is an economic discussion that I would like to maybe talk about a little bit later.
You know, I want to share one thing, because while you were talking, you were saying, what do you share with your children? I spoke to a friend who might come on later. He's a police officer in Lynn, Massachusetts, and that's where I was born. It's north of Boston. It's a tough area. You know, it's an area that, you know, there's definitely a lot going on, a lot of fights. There's definitely racism up there. So he's in a tough place, and he's black. Right.
Yeah.
And he brought up a point to me that I realized, like, you know, you or I, like, we don't sit there in basketball going, hey, you know, how's racism lately? You know, we just like each other. We don't
absolutely
have those conversations.
Right.
And I never sat there drunk one night crying with you having these conversations. We've never been to that place.
Right.
Well, I'd never been to that place with a lot of my black friends, because we just hang out and enjoy each other and go home.
Yeah.
So he says this to me. He goes, do you know how me and a couple of our buddies who are black used to judge you guys? I was like, what? He's like, the ones that would hug us after a big game or drink from our cup. And I'm like, well, what's the difference? He goes, you didn't see a difference. That's the point.
Yeah.
And I'm like, seriously? Some people would hug you? And they're like, no, dude. They're like, you didn't see that? I'm not watching who's hugging who or who. And they're like, you'd always drink from our cup. I'm like, because I was thirsty. And they're like,
Right.
They're like, you're black or whatever. But that just never passed my mind. Like, like, I'll be honest, if you have a Gatorade and you say I can have it, I'm drinking the thing because I'm thirsty.
That's right, man.
I'm not deciding are your lips different than mine.
Yeah.
So those little things, I was like, is this real?
Yeah.
And so my mind's been spinning with that stuff where I can't imagine your child going, oh, they don't like me because they wouldn't hug me or they wouldn't drink from the same cup or something. Like, what is this, like 1930? Like, where are we?
Yeah.
So what do you tell your kids? Like, how do you react to that? What do you?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm a divorced dad. So, you know, when I do get to see my children, it's almost like a smorgasbord. I'm trying to get all their attention. They're trying to get all my attention in that short period of time. And, you know, we don't always have these conversations, but there are times where, you know, my little one, or when I say the youngest, her name is McKenna. She's very inquisitive. She has an old soul in her body, by the way. She's a 13-year-old with probably a 40, 50-year-old body. Seriously, her mind, it amazes me. But the questions that she poses to me makes me think sometimes. Like, I mean, she will ask me about, Daddy, what do you feel about LGBTQ? Daddy, what do you feel about, you know, my stepfather who's white? You know, she always gives me a question of challenge. And I'm like, McKenna, this is a great question. You know, and I wouldn't say I wouldn't expect it from her, because I do, but you have to really be on your toes and give from your heart, not just your mind. And so I won't answer all this, but a particular example I gave her, I said, I love everyone, and as you should too. She said, I was just curious, Dad, you know, because, you know, I have a lot of friends who are gay or lesbian, but I don't look at them as that. I look at them as really good people, but they always get picked on. And I was like, that is sad. You know, that is not a good thing. No one should pick on anyone because of their orientation or whatever ethnicity they're from. And so she gets it. You know what I mean? Her heart hurts. And so I think, you know, her mom and her grandparents and all of her family for instilling that, you know what, we love people. As long as the people are loved, they love themselves. And if they don't love themselves and they're hurting others, then we don't like those people. But that doesn't mean we can't still try to help those people. And so it is this type of world we're in today, where when you see, you know, cops who are intentionally scheming to gun down people because of the color of their skin, that hurts. It makes us cry. You know, it makes us really sad. And then what do you do about it? Because you haven't been put in a situation to activate and to mobilize. You've been taught, when my day and age, you taught to sort of pray, turn the cheek and go the other way and go in church. Well, yeah, go vote, go to church and pray. Those are all great things. But until you actually talk about the economy and the economics of racism, we're always going to end back up having the same conversation.
Wow. So thank you for saying that. Sorry, Scott, were you gonna go? No, one of the things that you kind of talked about it just for a second before, like how's the last week or two been for you when you go out in public? Are you finding people being more friendly or like being uncomfortable? You know, how do you feel like things have been? Have people been like more like, hey, you know, hi, or, you know, trying to be like letting you know that they support you without being like stupid, like, hey, I support people. You know, have you seen that? Have you felt that?
So I'm not shy on social media. So I post daily about some of the things that are going on in the world. I'm not shy about what I support and what I'm against. And so for those who are listening in, I just want to be very transparent and blunt with you right now. I fully support Black Lives Matter. Let's get that out the way. Okay.
Yeah.
But I do not support property being torn down. I do not support the rioting. I do not support the fires that are happening. Because you are anti-Trump or you're anti all these other things. There are other ways to show your vengeance and your angriness through peaceful ways, through ways that again impacts longer term, which I said is economic reform. Yes, protesting, all those things. We have to have a voice first. You have to activate through your voice first so you can be heard. So you know that, hey, we're not going to be at peace because of things that you did wrong. But protesting without reform is not going to change the things that happen. So to answer your question, Chris, I was on a walk today, 3 miles today. And I walked past every person I walk past. I'm actually right now in Bee Caves. So I'm in Bee Caves. So I walk along 620 and the trail, right? And so every person I pass is white. And I smile and I say hi. And guess what the responses were?
Hopefully hi back.
I'm going to guess there's a ton of big highs, like making sure they were still hello.
Hey, it wasn't, hey, black guy. Hey, see you. No, it wasn't that. And it wasn't that I was looking for a response. It's just genuinely I speak, right? And so I think it's important to put your head up. I don't ever want to put my head down when I'm passing people, regardless of your color, but I always put my head up. I was taught that in the military, but you always acknowledge people. Look them in the eyes and show them. And that makes, when you get eye connection with a person, it genuinely brings out the trueness of that person. And so what that does, it's either going to bring out a smile or it's going to bring out a head turn. Or maybe I can't hear you or see you. That's another thing. But I'm going to make sure I get eye contact all the way. Not crazy eye contact, but that eye contact to let you know I acknowledge you. And because I can't judge you based on the color of your skin. I will never do that. But I will acknowledge you as a grown man, as a person on this earth, just like you. Absolutely. And so I haven't gotten any weird looks because I'm not expecting weird looks. And I know how to handle a look when it's weird. I just keep moving. I'm not going to turn around like you gave me a weird look. No, that person probably had a bad day. His wife probably cursed him out because he didn't, clean up the bedroom or something. You never know what's going on in people's world. So I give people a little bit more benefit of the doubt. So.
Well, I knew we would get along based on the fact that if you know Scott, because I do the same exact thing everywhere I go, looking like this, which is obviously not even comparable. But some people look at me like, oh my God, I want to talk to that guy. He looks like a biker or whatever. And I do the same exact thing, dude, is I sit there and I go, hi, how you doing? My wife can attest to that. She's like, you say hi to everybody. I'm like, why not? The person you say hi to might be the person that needs it the most. And especially this day and age, I just did a Facebook Live yesterday. I'm like, you guys keep asking, like, what can you do? I'm like, just be courteous to people now. Say hi, hold the door for them, have a conversation with them when you're standing in line, let them go first in the lane, just have genuine courtesy and common fucking ethics, how you treat people.
Absolutely. And I'll say one more thing. Recognize what's going on in the world. First of all, I need to give a quick shout out. Eric Ben, what's going on? It's people. I'm doing a watch party on my Facebook, by the way. So I don't know how to send them here, but if you want to make an announcement about your live stream so people can join in, that would be great. But I did a watch party. That was the only way I can try to get everybody on here. So shout out everybody who's on. So
Chris,
I can go. I can go.
Comments and then Aubrey can pull it and send it to his folks.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah. Actually, I can. Yep.
Yeah. And Scott, maybe give a little just shout of your show again, because I want people to follow you and Christopher. Maybe do that. I think that will be helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. What we're doing is
I just put it in the private chat, Arvin, so you can go in there and copy it out from there, and also put it on this post, our comments here, but I have to do it from my iPad.
Yep, I got it right here. Okay, I'll copy it here and put it on over. Cool, man. So what I was saying here is, where was I? I was about to say something.
We were talking about walking. We were talking about the people, the smiles, the heads up. Just like looking at somebody's soul versus the color of their skin or anything.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think number one, it's very important to understand and recognize and really face this head on. Call it what it is. We are in a racial war, and I hate 50 years later in my life, age one back in 1969 when I was born, all the way to now 2020. 2020 is supposed to be the year of like laser focus, right? And we've been hit with the pandemic. We've been hit with, protesting, a lot of things that has to happen, and they crossed over. They're kind of blending together, and it's almost a blessing and a curse. And I say this, that the blessing, the silver lining to all this, it is force people to get up out of their homes. And I think the pandemic has been putting people in their homes for some time. So maybe the protest was an excuse for you to get out. But whatever the reason is that you got out and you voiced your concern around the racial injustice, this has been a huge, huge moment. But just as those families who lost the lives of their loved ones, and we're talking since 1999, over 100 Black Americans or Blacks who have lost their lives to unarmed, lost them in the hands of some hideous criminals of the law enforcement. Just don't judge every single police officer because of what these bigots have done. Okay. And I say that not loosely, right? I'm saying that with a firm tongue, as these people that have killed a lot of, I will call them my brothers and sisters. You're my brothers and sisters too, but these families are still hurting. They're still hurting. And this has been going on for far too long. Recognize that for what it is, but don't judge your next door neighbor off of that. Find out how you can, create a coalition in your neighborhood. And if you already know that people are not willing to work with, fine, move on. Find the people that are going to support your movement and understanding. But I wouldn't judge every single person. That is not the right thing to do. I have people that I work with every day who will break their back for me, because they've reached out to me, Christopher and Scott, and say, hey, what can I do? I said, well, first of all, I'm not being mean, but I don't need any pity. I like to fight for my things. This is me. This is the Arvin number 2 talking, the stubborn Arvin. So I don't like anybody to feel sorry for me, because I'm always trying to be 2 steps ahead of where I feel like people are already putting me. And we could talk about systemic racism in my career if you want to do that. But in my career growing up, I've always was challenged to compete at a much higher level. And I never wanted racism to be an excuse for me to say, you know what, I didn't get where I needed to go because I'm Black. I never use that. You will never, ever hear me say that. But what I will do is recognize that I am Black and there are challenges, and I will work harder. That doesn't mean I need to get a handout. That just means I'm recognizing and acknowledging that I do work harder than most of my colleagues in the same space, for the same salary, for the same work, promotions. And that's why I'm an entrepreneur also, because I can call my own shots. I can create my own journey. I can help other people on my terms, not on an employer terms. So I tell anyone, yes, we are facing, adversity when it comes to this systemic racism, but don't use that as a crutch to not be the best that you can be. I know I'm gonna get beat up by saying that, but I honestly say that, if we continue to do that, we're going to continue to blame the system, and it's going to keep us back. In order for us to move forward, we have to collectively, and this is not, Scott, if you own a business, Chris, if you own a business, I will support your businesses because I know you. But collectively, as a reform, there are companies that I will pull my dollars away, and I have companies such as Home Depot, companies such as all of these companies that are supporting Trump right now. I will not support.
Yep.
If it's a big company that's pouring their dollars and they are blind to what's going on in this world, I'm going to put my money. I'd rather put my money into you as a small business owner, Scott and Chris, and all the Black-owned businesses that are in my city to support them, and any other business that I feel is supporting the cause, whether you're white, Black, Chinese, Asian. But here's one thing. Have you seen, and this came from an interview that I was just listening to, and I want to repeat this. And I'm going to pose this to you. I'm going to interview you with this question. Have you seen white policemen gun down Jewish on a daily basis?
No.
Okay. Why do you feel that way? Why do you think they have not gunned down other races and they've only gunned down African American? I'm not only gunned down, but the proportion is that they've gunned down more African American. If you look at the statistics,
I'm going to give two answers to this. I'm going to give and this is where I can get attacked, and I'm willing to do this. I'm going to give two answers. The perceived answer that somebody listening wants to say right now is they do what they're told. They comply. They say the right things. That's what the perceived answer is.
Okay.
The real answer is, I think, very simple, is they look more like them. And I think when somebody looks more like you, we've got so much perceived ignorance of, like Heather came on the show and said this.
Mm-hmm.
People are afraid. I mean, Arden, like honestly, there's something, I don't know if it's right or wrong with my mind.
Right.
But if I see anybody on the street, and I'm a 6'4" male too, so maybe it doesn't matter, but nobody bothers me. Like when I see people, I'm like, hey, what's up? And to your point, it doesn't bother me. Like anybody I see, I think there's a lot of police who come from places where there's a good chance that they're told that it's us versus them. That's why you're policing. Yeah. So imagine if it's us versus them. You're picking very specific, I wouldn't say enemies, but othering. I mean, we've seen it. Like, you ever see those shows where they show like somebody, you have to shoot real quick and they send people out? They always shoot the black guy first, always.
Yeah.
You've seen it?
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. Like, they'll cut people up. You have to shoot. Is it a good guy or a bad guy? As soon as it's a black guy, could be a black woman holding groceries. They always shoot. There's something in the subconscious mind. Which we started this show with. There's a fear.
Yeah. So, Chris, what about you? And I'll give you my take on it.
You know what? That's a very difficult question to ask, or a difficult question to answer, because my first inclination is like what Scott says, we look the same. You can't really go out and say, oh, you're Jewish. I mean, I just found out my lineage. I don't know who my dad was, but I just found out my lineage and I'm like half something Jew. And I'm like, I have any idea that I was like that. But, it just depends. I would think about it in terms of demographics in different places. Like I would think it'd be less involved in major metropolitan cities, but more in the inner cities that they're just looking at like, okay, probable cause. I was watching a video the other day with somebody and she was talking about that she, got pulled over. She goes, when I get pulled over, she goes, it takes me 45 minutes. She's a black lady. And she says, I literally have to narrate everything I'm doing as I'm doing it because of how it's going to be perceived. So I would say that there's that bias. There's, I mean, I've known people way back in the day that were signing up to get into the military and get into the police academy because they wanted to go use that force against other people they didn't like. Like, what better way to do it than I'm going to get in there and go hurt these people? But more than that, I want to hear what your answer is. Yeah,
that's a very good point. And I've actually heard that I was, like I said, I was military for 10 years, United States Air Force Reserve. Thank you very much for acknowledging that. My experience with racism coming from a city that is predominantly is a very segregated city growing up, was that it was about the color of your skin, but it was also about not only the color of your skin, it was a lot dealing with welfare and economics. And so, if you think about it, Jews, even Asians, right? Their knits are very, very strong when it comes to family ties. They come together, they build businesses, and then they turn around and sell products to African Americans. We're one of the largest consumers of Asian products, but we won't create our own. And I'm calling this out because, something happened 400 years ago right? Or even before then, that sort of this world we're in, it has broken us. As a black African American growing up in Montgomery, it broke us. We didn't trust each other. And it wasn't that we didn't trust each other because we didn't love that person. We didn't trust that person because we knew that that person would steal or rob from us. And that was kind of ingrained in us over generations of time, because we've all fought for what we never had. We never had anything growing up, right? There are a handful of blacks that have things, but those handful can only help so many people, right? You get the Asian community, you get the Jewish community, they're all going to make sure that they build a wall around their community. And if there's anything trying to penetrate that, they're all going to make sure that their people are taken care of. And so with that type of world we have grown in, I'm just calling out reality. I'm not saying that this is the way that I am growing up in the world today. It is close to that still, but we've come some ways. We're not there yet. The thing is, we need more African Americans. We need more blacks to start putting their monies back into black businesses. We need more African Americans and blacks to start creating their own businesses and stop relying on government resources. And I say this because this is part of that reform. It doesn't say we don't want to do business with whites, we don't want to do business with Asians, or we don't want to do business with Jews or whoever that may be. It's not about racism at that level. It's about economic control and reform. We can't pass anything down to our generations that's coming behind us if we don't already have something that we own.
Yep.
And it's a reality. You look at the statistics, we are a single-digit percentage of ownership in this country. And it's sad. We're making strides in ways to do that, but we can't always rely on the people who are already rich and multi-billionaires. We have to build within our communities. So that means everybody who is really about, helping, you post on LinkedIn, you post on social media and Facebook that, hey, you're with the fight of Black Lives Matter, whatever it may be, whatever that is, to make sure that your company is participating in lip service. Now it's time to put your 10 toes on the ground and start putting dollars where you feel like it's going to create some activity. And I challenge all companies, whether you're a small business or a large business, there are ways that you can break this systemic racism by creating funds, real estate, generating pools of investment dollars to give back to communities where they're tearing down homes where blacks have lived for hundreds of years, and they're building up these new high rises. We can't allow corporate America to take away our communities.
Yep.
Massive. And Arvin, thank you for sharing that. That kind of goes along the lines with what Trisha has. We invited everybody to ask questions. So she says, what dialogue do we need to have to start to heal? What questions do we need to ask each other? So basically you're giving information, but we invited people to ask live questions just so that they can actually feel like they can be a part of the solution as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I say the very first thing is, I don't know anyone's history and lineage when it comes to other than what media may portray, right? I think it's good to just, first of all, start with your children. So I think right now generations are not as whitewashed as we are when it comes to racism. So if you look at the 18-year, look at the people who are protesting, look at the ages of the people that are protesting. They're the young generations. They don't really care about white and black. I'm not talking about the people who are rioting, tearing down, property. I'm talking about the kids out there. That generation right now, they're fighting for equality, and it hurts them. It hurts them also the same as it hurts us. And that's why we're seeing such a collective force. We have to, as parents, talk to that generation about the true things that has happened. And we as parents need to get rid of and drop our own wall between each other. Okay. We need to start there. So I would say start in your home first. And then in your job site, I think it's important to call out your leaders of your company. If they're not making efforts to address racism and creating true diversity in the ranks and the leaderships of your companies, then they're not about the reform at all. And you have to really step out of your comfort zone in order to have those conversations. Yes, we have families that we have to support, and we're not willing to put our jobs on the line. We may be in a role where we're getting a lot of pressure from, leaders of a company. But to me, that is what it takes as a leader in your own family to make those really tough decisions and have those tough conversations. And then once you have those conversations, I think it makes it easier for people to have them with other people. So until we stop being silent and having those conversations in our own family and stop looking at the other side that don't look like you as somebody that is different or inferior or someone that's a threat, look at me for who I am. I'm an educated person, just like the rest of my family, my sister, all of us, we went to school, but that doesn't make us who we are. What makes us who we are is that we love people. We were taught to love each other on this earth and to treat people with the same respect that we're given. And if we can open our hearts up to that first and have those heart-to-heart conversations, I will call my own family member out. If you're treating someone with miskind and disrespect, regardless of their color, their race, their individuality, I will call you out. And I will do that. Scott, I'll call you out.
I want to be. And I'd say the same thing. We all should be calling people out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chris and I say the same thing. Like a good friend isn't the person who says yes, yes, yes. On the show, we agree with everything, it seems like, because we're always talking through stuff that we agree with. Today could be different. But like the other day, he sent a post to me from somebody I didn't agree with the author. And I said, I can't stand that author. I don't believe what he says. I disagree with you. Yeah. And I don't hate Chris. I'm not upset with Chris. I don't like what he sent me. That's it. So we have to say that, to keep each other in check.
Yeah.
So here's a question I want to ask you, Arvin, because it's one that I've been preaching this a lot on social media, and I want to get your take. I would say, from talking to a lot of my friends who are Black, one of the things that keeps coming up is everyone keeps saying, I'm not racist.
Right.
Okay, great. So you're not racist. But that sounds extremely complicit to me. And I keep saying, are you anti-racist? And then they kind of go, well, I didn't do this. I go, are you anti-racist? And they're like, well, I didn't own a slave. Like, they're going through all the same crap. Mm-hmm. What's the difference between being not racist and anti-racist? And is it important to you as a Black man or for the Black community for people to be one or the other?
Wow.
Great question.
That is a great question. I think that's a great question, Scott. Let me start by saying, I think for me, I think we have to define what racism is first. Okay. And no pun intended, racism is not black and white. Racism is about, hating or disliking or treating someone differently because of who they are, right? Their individuality, because they don't fall into your criteria as a normal person, how they define normal. To me, that is racism, right? Being a racist, right? Being a racist is now I'm doing things that are evil against you, or I hate you. I'm doing hatred acts because of that, right? And so let me back up. So racism itself alone is not a negative thing. It's actually it's the way we define our individuality. Okay, so we are all a human race, right? But we're all individual in our own minds, and collectively we make up the human race, right? Racist, right? And the term of being a racist is now, I'm taking this to the extreme, is now my group and individuality now trumps you, and I don't like you. So that to me is, and that is me being anti-white or anti-Asian or pro-Black. Doesn't always mean I'm anti-white. It just means that I'm fighting only for my cause, which in turns, is sort of a symbolism of racism, right? Then you have anti-racists, right? So you have those who are against racism, meaning that I don't see any color at all. I don't see your individuality. So now that's even more offensive to me, because when it's time to appreciate individuality for what it is and what it's called for, you don't see that. And so I think sometimes people use the racism or anti-racist statement, right, so that it defends their voice from having to say anything on both sides. You take this neutral stand. It's almost like, it's kind of a very, very bad analogy, but you have the left and you have the right. You have the blue and you have the red. And then you have the people in the middle. Oh, I'm not for Trump nor Obama. I'm like, and that's true. The politics can be a little different, where you have views and issues that you support on one side and views and issues that you support on the other. But it may be one dominant thing that indoctrinates you to be more left or more right, right? But most people try to play that safe line so that they don't commit. To me, it's more about committal. It's okay to say that, you know what, I support, blacks in the cause. I'm okay to say, Scott and Christopher and this, your audience, don't take this the wrong way. If you say, I'm going to start a all white lives matter. So I would appreciate and respect that than saying all lives matter, because
really,
I would. Here's why. Whether I agree with it or not, I would respect that you took a stance for a comment, something that was important to you. Now, all lives do matter, but there's got to be something common to all of us, right? And so if you're fighting for all lives, right, and blacks are suffering right now, and you still using the term all lives, then it's not about all lives. It's about most lives, because right now we need your help. So if it's about all lives, then you would help the black cause as well as you would help others in the same respect. But if you're not doing anything, you tell me all lives matter, you're just lip service. Because right now, at this point in time in the world, it's the Black Lives movement has opened up doors for the LGBTQ and other individual groups where they're also being discriminated against, right? And so if you really think about it, if you really say that you're about all lives, then you would be supporting all movements.
Wow, perfectly said. I mean, thank you so much for distinguishing that, because honestly, Arvin, that's one of the things I've been having challenges with over this last week is I've got a lot of Latino friends and like, well, what about the Latinos? We're discriminated against, we're putting those different things. But thank you for saying that, because that's been part of my education, raising my hand. I mean, I've always been all people, love all people, but the words we use, we really need to be careful with that in many respects, because I've had people say that, oh, I'm colorblind, thinking that's a good thing. Like I don't see color. But at the same time, what you're just saying, and thank you so much for saying that, is that we have to see color and see the uniqueness and see the fact that we have a segment of our society that needs everyone's help. At this point, I mean, when you look at it, you can't disagree that the black community has been singled out and has had these different things happening to them. You don't hear about knees on all this other stuff, and of course, that's the media, and that's a whole different discussion. So thank you for saying that, because people have said, "Oh, I'm colorblind," or what about all lives? So that's it's an important distinction. Yes, everyone matters in the scheme of things. But this period in time, this is what we're addressing. Like you said, Scott, earlier, is the fact that we have to build each segment of society up. And let's take what the worst thing that's happening, build those people up, show the camaraderie, show the world. I mean, like you were saying, Arvin, that's the thing that's got me so gassed up. Seriously, I was washing my hands the other night and I was pissed off and I was angry. I was like, and I don't like having that energy in my body. Yeah. And I was washing my hands and I looked at myself in the mirror and I'm like, how can I turn this around? And I thought, this is going to be in the history books 20 years from now. I'm going to look back and they're like, holy shit. Yeah. And 2020 was a motherfucker. And those guys, look at the world stood up and went, bam. I say it like it too. And I use all the different things. So thank you for saying that. Is there some other words or other phrases or other things that we as white people or as a community get screwed up that offends or that makes mad, that makes the black community mad? Because I think I've talked to my friends like, I told my friend this and he took it as a wrong way. So
Yeah.
help us how we can communicate on that so that we don't do those offensive things.
Yeah, I may be the wrong guy to ask for that. And I think my approach to anyone, first of all, I'm going to come to you as a man, Christopher, as God as a man first. I'm not going to come to you as anybody else as that. I demand, not demand, I expect the same level of respect as I would give you, just as on equal surface, right? So my approach to all of this is, if you, Chris, this is tough for me to answer because I don't have any beef with any person based on the color of their skin or where they're from. I don't really have that beef. And so for anyone to come at me, first of all, I want to understand why don't you agree with me, or why don't you like me, or what are the things that is about me that you don't like? I want to know first, genuinely, what is that? Do I smell funny? What is it, right? And so I'm never going to have this. I can't really speak on that like I really feel like I can, because I don't look at it that way. And I'm honestly saying that my approach to life is always to try to be nice to everybody and be positive on all fronts. So to be very transparent with you, that's a very tough one for me to even answer.
I understand.
Yeah, it's just tough. I don't have any expectations. I don't have any expectations from anybody other than treat people with the same respect. That's it. You don't have to be nice to me. You don't have to smile at me, but you don't have to treat me like shit either. Excuse my French. But other than that, I'm good. I'm not gonna. I don't care.
I've got.
And thank you for that. I was just gonna say, all my friends that told me, because I was like, careful about what you say, and all of them just said, all my black friends said, Chris, just lead with your heart.
Yeah.
And that's I wanted to see what your perspective on it was, but that's my advice to you guys out in the community is just lead with your heart. And if your heart's in the right spot, that's the best place to be.
Yeah. You have I really want to answer Trisha's question, because she asked me a couple of questions. What do I mean by supporting BLM? And I will vote for Trump, but I will also go into any neighbor. And that's and Trisha, that is fine. So let me just make sure that I'm very clear about my support. My support of BLM doesn't mean that I don't support I support a lot of organizations. I've dropped, lots of money on a lot of organizations, and, everyone has their own initiatives of what they support. What I really meant, Trisha, about supporting Black-owned businesses, this is not to say don't support white businesses. I didn't say that. I said I'm not going to support those businesses who are against what we are fighting for. That is what I'm saying. And typically it boils down to organizations that are very politically driven. So that to each is their own in their political agendas and choices. But I'm right now talking about how to move away from a systemic injustice, systemic racism era that we've been in for 400 years. And it benefits everyone if everyone can be taught how to build their communities through economics and not having to rely so much on government funding. That is my point. And in order to do that, one of the actions is to put more money back into businesses. So yes, we do support the business in your community. Do support who you are affiliated with in your political arena. I don't have a problem with that. But now I'm talking about reform. More so than protests, more so than voting, is that there needs to be an economic plan and action so that we're not having to come back to this same, conversation 10 years later. That is my point. I'm basing this on my experience growing up in Montgomery, Alabama, where a lot of people were poor, and most of those people poor growing up in my community were Black. And the reason is because they didn't get the same jobs as other people in those areas because of the color of their skin. And that's a fact. So in order to shift that, sometimes you have to go back into your communities to save them so that those communities can grow and build and help other businesses, white, Black, Chinese, Asian, and Jews as well.
So Arvin, I want to ask a question that I think ties in nicely, share a little perspective and then ask the question. So when I was in graduate school, and I want to share a bit of my racist behavior that I didn't even understand was racist, and then lead into a question with it. So in graduate school, we had a professor, his name was Mick something, I can't remember his last name, but it was one of the best classes I had in grad school. And this is 25 years ago, so you forget all the details. But I had a friend of mine, Luther Faust, who was black, who sat next to me. And I remember we were all buddies, and then all of a sudden it's business ethics, and the teacher goes, "What do you guys think of affirmative action?" And of course I'm like, why do I have to sit next to a black guy when you're gonna ask this question? But I gave my honest answer. I said, it's ridiculous because, you know, if I bust my butt and he had a 70 and I had a 90, that's ridiculous. And that was my first thought, my honest thought.
Mine too.
Yeah, just an honest thought.
Yeah.
And then Luther just very casually, he was an ex-military guy. We were really good friends. And he's like, okay. So we really had the great debate throughout the class. Bottom line, by the end, I was fully in favor of affirmative action, and it was a good mind change. But I had opportunity to connect with other people. So here's my thing. You said something that really resonated with me. You said you've worked much harder as a black man to get the same level of promotions or in your work. And there's a big assumption. I'm going to tell you this loud and clear, because where I might, you know, intercept the racist joke or the comment and say, dude, that's ridiculous. Like, don't say that. Yep. I don't know that I intercept the comments about affirmative action and things like that effectively, because a lot of people say things like, well, dude, that guy got into UT because he's black. And I'm like, you know, I'm kind of thinking it, but I'm like, yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. There's definitely a preconceived notion that the world is giving black people things that whites aren't.
Woo, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
No, because I can tell you right now, I want that perspective selfishly for me.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. Let me give you my perspective on it.
Right.
So I'm a firm believer of equality, but I honestly, and let me just call it what it is, right? I've always rejected any sort of given handout because of the color of my skin, always. And to this day, I will continue to say, unless I know I've worked my butt off, I don't expect anyone to hand anything down to me because of the color of my skin. I don't. Now, I'm not saying that to each is their own, but that is not how I roll. That's not how I operate, because what I instill in my everyday life to myself when I wake up in the morning is, what is the one thing that I'm going to go out and conquer? What is the one thing I will go out and challenge myself to do, regardless and despite of the adversities? Because that truly is what makes me the stronger person I am. Is that always the case in a collective world? No, it's not. So yes, there is affirmative action, and I firmly believe that affirmative action is put into place for reasons where it gives us sort of an equal playing field. But and I'm talking to everyone on here that's black, African American, that I'm speaking to you directly, is that we can't allow these things like affirmative action and initiatives to be we can't let them blindside and say, okay, just because, you know, affirmative action is in place, I know I deserve this, or I'm going to get this. You know, we still have to work at things that we want, right? And we still have to work at things. And so I always challenge the younger generation, you know, that I mentor. Anyone who comes to me and asks me, Arvin, what do you recommend as far as my career? I will tell you, you know, you want to be the best in your field regardless, but you also do it in a way to where you're surrounding the best around you. If you're always going to be the smartest person in your circle, well, guess what? That is not the smartest move. So in my career, what I've always done, I've never, ever made an excuse on where I am. I can statistically say that, you know, there are places where I probably should be because of just my work, my productivity. And then I sometimes like, you know, maybe I just didn't get that promotion because maybe I didn't get this promotion because, you know, you start to second guess your own productivity. But then when you put the numbers together, you're like, wait a minute, I just generated $500,000 for this company in like less than a year, and they've never done it before. And I've like, it may not be about racism, okay? And that's where you have to be very careful, is that you don't know what those decisions are made on. But when you look at collectively of what an executive board is made of, you want to make sure that your voice is heard. So instead of, drawing conclusions that because everyone is white and they're male, that they're racist. No, I make it a duty to get in those conversations, and I make sure that my voice is heard at those companies. And that alone has enough weight to say that my voice is also important in this company. Okay. But I've allowed myself to not ignore it, but not to use it as a crutch to say, I'm going to use this as a means to go to my manager and talk about a promotion. Never have. I never will do that. But in the back of my mind, I know there's always a decision made, whether I'm more qualified or not, is because of what that manager preconceived notion was about those two candidates. That is a fact.
Wow. That actually reminds me of something that happened. I remember freshman year. It's a beautiful comment. We all want to go to this has to be the reason and decide on the reason. And I'll never forget a comment that a parent made freshman year for basketball tryouts. One of the parents came up to the coach, and I overheard her, and there were two kids, and she goes, "Why didn't my son make the team? He was just as good as so and so." And the guy goes, "He was just as good. I had to pick one." And that's really what it comes down to. Is there's so many little variables, but you're going to sit here and say, this is why, and you're deciding. Right. And that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's very hard. I mean, I've managed 40 people at one time in my career, and, being a black manager in a company where you have, 39 white people, and not 39 white, but one black person, and the rest are white, Asian, and Hispanic. It's a very, you can't at that point say that your relationships with people don't impact your decision. And they do, because we're all humans. But you have to really be a leader. And this is where I feel like, our president fails. Despite what side of the fence you're on, as a leader, you don't continue to promote division. This is a time where you get out with the people and you show them your support. These people are fighting for help. They're fighting for answers. And you have a leader who's not supporting, what's going on. As opposed, you're going to go throw the dogs at the people, the same people that are out here peacefully protesting, not the ones who are rioting and tearing down people. Yeah, get those people too. But what happens is now everyone is now on edge. It's because you putting our own U.S. armed forces against your own people on your own soil, treating us like dogs. And I say us as everyone. And when he did that, I don't care if I'm Republican or Democrat. To me, as a person, that is not leadership. That is not true leadership. It broke my heart as a veteran, to know that I want to protect my country. There are people out there crying. There are people out there hurting. They are begging for leadership. They're begging for the leadership, and they don't know if they're going to get it from the president that's in office today. And it could be a lot of other things around that surrounds that type of his actions. But again, that broke my heart when I saw him make that call.
Yeah, and you've got a beloved military official in Mattis who every Republican was in love with, who literally fully denounced Trump because he's dividing the country.
Right.
I mean, there's really, if you step back and just say, and again, we could talk about this. Do you lean one way or the other, or not take a stand and sit in the middle? We both have, different things that we think about. But here's one thing that I'd like to think that we can all agree in. We're the United States of America. There's nothing our current leadership is doing that's uniting. Nothing. And so here's the deal. If we vote for the next guy, does that change everything? No. You talked about it. You said it. Let's just play out a visual real quick. Let's say that we remove the cancer right now, the division, the cancer, the administration, And then we start going through and we start really effectively learning about who our congresspeople are, and we start voting in the right people who are going to make active change. You brought up an amazing point. You said that your 13-year-old seems like she's this mystical creature who's deeply connected to source. And I'm looking at my 13-year-old. I teach college. These 18 and 19-year-old kids are all like that.
Yeah.
They are going to lead this country. We are going to be okay. We're going to get rid of this old blood that has racism and old views and old perspectives that they're not willing to shift. That's going to happen with or without our input. But we've got to steady the ship, and then it's not done. Like we pick the other white guy. It doesn't make everything perfect. Yeah. But you brought up some beautiful points. We start investing. Think of this. Let's just say that the Black community is my broken femur right now.
Right.
If I don't heal my broken femur and I'm trying to go out and hunt, eventually my entire system, my being dies. Yeah. And people forget that. So what's going to end up happening is until we heal the Black community, I'm walking with a broken femur. Yeah. The minute that is healed by investing in Black businesses, by supporting people, affirmative action programs that promote equity so we can level the playing field. Once we're there, the whole system is healed and we are everything we said we couldn't become.
Yeah, agreed.
And so there's so many details to this. The elections are one thing for national elections, the local elections, the input. Somebody just commented, I don't know if you're on that thread, Arvin, but somebody said, can we get the mayor to put Black Lives Matter on a street leading up to, one of the buildings downtown like they did in Washington, D.C.
Yeah,
And I got in touch with Eugene Sepulveda, who works with the mayor's office, and he said it's already in action. It's going to happen. Yeah. And so people are moving and they're doing things. So, I'm getting excited because I'm seeing the action taking. What do we do? Because you brought this up at the beginning of the show. You said you're seeing for the first time everyone's emotional and doing something. Yeah. How do we keep this train moving? Because so many times the next news story comes in, second wave of COVID, shark attack on the East Coast, something crazy is going to just nullify this. What do we do to not let people stop talking about healing the Black community and then ultimately healing the whole? Absolutely. How do we keep this top of mind and in the discussion?
Well, first of all, we have an epidemic now that we have acknowledged. Mm-hmm. And I think if I don't see this ever again, a day on this earth, I could say that I feel like there's more unity now than I've seen my entire adulthood. I'll be honest with you.
And it's coming from us.
But it's coming. You're right. And Scott, and I say this, and I love the comments on here, Trisha and Pamela and Sherry, despite what our beliefs and our opinions are, I love every person that has the same passion for people. I love you, right? So number one, let's keep the positivity going. I think that's going to make a huge difference. Now, the other piece of this, and I keep bringing this up. Now, BLM, Black Lives Matter, BLM itself is an organization. There are Blacks who don't support BLM. So I just want you all to get this right. Just because it says Black Lives Matter doesn't mean all Blacks support it, right? And just because it's BLM doesn't mean we're anti-white. Now, I support the Black movement, but I also support other organizations that support the Black movement that are not Black, okay? So I think it's important to let's get out of these, the terms and we're throwing out, these identity, what I call hashtags, right? Because now we're forming ourselves around what someone puts on the end of their social media versus understanding what's in that person's heart. And a lot of times we put things in our social media, we don't even know where the hell it started. You know what I mean? Like before you start, posting stuff, do some research. There are hundreds of books out there on these organizations. If there's something that you don't like about an organization, call their ass out. Call them out, right? So I bring up BLM as a supporting organization because of some of the things that they're doing. I'm not saying they're doing all the things right, but for them to take a huge initiative to do what they're doing, it has stimulated a lot more support. Now, there are other organizations that are not getting the credit that they deserve, the grassroots. And so I saw someone comment, it takes us as growing our village in order to make change, not at the top, but at the bottom. It has happened at the top, but we're not just, your vote is not going to change it. What's going to change is the people that you elect and you bring into office at the local level by voting for the people that you've done the homework on, but also the same people that you put in the office, you need to hold their asses accountable for what they say they're going to do.
Yes.
And collectively, if we start there, regardless of what color of our skin is, that will be the first change. The second change is I challenge all of my Black sisters and brothers. I challenge, because we're going to get past this. We're going to actually have justice for those who have lost their lives. We also have to support everyone else. We can't just support ourselves. We have to support the Scotts. We have to support the Christophers. We have to support Sherry. We have to support Angel. We have to support Pamela, because at the end of the day, we're still breathing the same air. And if those same people helped us during a time where we needed their help, then we need to show them in return that we're here to help you. So that is my commitment, not starting once this is over, but starting now, to show that unity in supporting the movement of the Black Lives Matter, but also how can I help my next door neighbor? Like, we're having a vigilant right now in my community around making sure our neighborhood is protected. And no one talked about, white racists and supremacists, white supremacists. They talked about how can we protect this street and community that we live on from those who are tearing up our community. And that is a collective. I can't go to a bank, or I can't go to McDonald's. I don't eat at McDonald's, by the way, but I can't go to Chick-fil-A and expect, oh, I don't want you to take my order because you're a Black cashier. No, that I have to also live with everyone else in this world. So I can't take a side to say I'm only going to support Black Lives Matter, but I know right now I have to support a cause that's needed. And that's a collective action that we all take, but we can't forget that other people also need support as well.
So massively. Thank you for saying that. I mean, that's what the world needs right now, because I've seen in different people's posts and having conversations that there could be that misunderstanding about that, like saying, okay, we're going to do this. So thank you so much for saying that, because it really is so important, the fact that we look at each other. And I think by the fact that you look at the protests, and I was watching the news yesterday, and I was looking at the protests in Seattle and all the different places, and I was really watching, number one, I was watching the peacefulness. I was watching the mix of the crowd, and I just saw, it was so beautiful. And you're right, there were younger people I saw people bringing their kids, and it was just like everybody's wearing masks, and they're being like this is like really happening, and it's so magnificent. And I'm not sure, I haven't looked at the news today or yesterday, but it almost seemed to me, at least, and this is my opinion, my perspective, it almost seemed like the first couple of nights there was looters and things going on, and shit was going crazy. At least I haven't checked last night, but it seemed almost like that stopped too. It was almost like people went to those guys and said, listen, stop fucking doing this. These people are serious, and they're trying to help us stop breaking down their businesses. You're burning down our own businesses for the sake of what? That is massive. And seeing those people are going, wait a minute, I'm not going to fuck this up for everybody else.
Right.
I mean, do you see that? Is that happening, or is that something I'm not seeing all the way?
I see social media and I see what's on the news. I don't see anything in my community happening just yet. I hear there's speculation of riots that are going to be happening, but again, this is all propaganda. I think not to take a short eye on this, but I want to share something, and I don't know what your take is on this, but one of the things that I try to practice is when you can learn about a person just by silence. You can learn by listening and really give that person the real estate to speak, right? And allowing a person to really share how they feel about things my always first practice is never prejudge a person, listen first, and then speak, right? And so what I have learned is that the stigma that's been placed on those who have been burned by a certain, group of people, whether it's white, whether it's the police, whatever it may be, right? Now we have learn to place labels, and it's not good. So now you have this guard up to say every time I meet a person that I'm automatically gonna put a label. I can only speak from my angle, is that is wrong. Okay. And then on the other side, I'm sure there are whites who have labels of African Americans and blacks when things happen to them, you know. And so now when something like the George the Floyd incident or the Aubrey, these killings happen, it's like, I heard a comment on social media was like, well, he shouldn't have been in the community, or he shouldn't have been running. Like, that doesn't give anybody a right, but it's because of what they have experienced and what they were taught. Right. And so this is my challenge. And this is what I want to challenge everyone. If you have children between the ages of 0 and 18 right now, or actually 18s, they think they're grown, but 0 and 15, 13, it is so important that you drop your biases. It's so important to recognize people for who they are, not by what you associated based on an event that you saw on social media off of one person. That one person who may have gunned down this other person doesn't represent those cops. Those 4 cops don't represent Scott. They don't represent Christopher. So I'm not going to point my finger at Scott and Chris and say, no, I don't support you because of what your white member did. No, I'm not. I've already done my, that's just wrong. You don't do that. So drop the biases, drop the labels, and accept people for who they are as you meet them. I promise you, if we can drop those labels and those stigmas, then we can start from there.
All right, I got a question for you, because what I try to do is my big thing on the show is I try to anticipate where people are going, yeah, buts. So
I was doing the same thing.
Yeah, you go ahead. You got one? Go right ahead.
No, I've got a bad one. I'm not even sure I want to ask, because it's just like I saw it yesterday and I argued with somebody and I was just like, I was so on the fence. Like, is that right? Is that okay? You want me to just go ahead and ask it? I mean,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Come on, man. Ask it.
You look like you wanted it more than I did.
No, honestly, it's something that's kind of blowing my mind. And transparent. Somebody posted something like, they said, you know, everybody has a right to march, even the KKK.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh no, I don't think so. I don't see that as being their right. I see it as their right to think what they want to think, but I don't believe that they should have the voice to be able to protest and march and spew that. And I'm so conflicted, because I'm like, okay, freedom of speech, all the technicalities, but at the same, I'm like, no, that is not right. That should not be right. They should not be allowed to do that. But what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I love everything you're saying, and thank you so much for sharing it, because it's so beautiful, exactly the way I intended it to hear it. So thank you so much. But what is your take on that?
Oh my gosh, you want me to talk about that? Okay, so this is where I'm going to remove my bias. Okay. Maybe you asked me this when I was 20 years old, when I grew up in Alabama as a kid and seeing how KKK has infiltrated our city. I would probably have a different viewpoint. For what they stand for and what they believe in, I will never, ever agree. That's not, I don't care if you're white, black, Chinese, or gray. If you are out to hurt people and you are anti whatever, I disagree with your motive and mission. But if you took each of those people who grew up in that era, you took them apart, took them away from KKK, and you spent time with them, Scott, Christopher, we all took time to speak with that one person. We can change people.
Oh yeah.
We can change people. So humans can be changed and influenced based on the actions of others. So the only reason I would say they would have a right to march, if their fight for the right to march is for good and not for evil. But because of what they believe in, and that's their belief, that doesn't really take I mean, honestly, if you think about our country, that doesn't take their right away to march as a human being, but we disagree with what they believe in. But I say, if you want to march as KKK and you're marching for a cause that is positive, then I will support you. But because you're not about positive and you're about anti-blacks and and whites or white supremacist power, then I don't agree with that. And that would be a very, very bad thing to do. That doesn't mean they don't have the right to do it. It's just a bad thing to do, and I would not support it.
Have you seen, I think the movie's called Best of Enemies. Have you seen that?
Say again?
I think it's called Best of Enemies. I forget the name of the movie, but long story short, it was.
No, I haven't seen that.
It goes through this. It's incredible, and I have to double check the name of it. But long story short, the movie is about an activist, essentially the KKK and a black activist, and they come together and they're forced to talk to one another for a certain period of time and see if they can come to like a solution. And they're thinking there's no way, but over time, they go through hatred, through indifference, through, oh, you're a human, to solving. It's crazy. It's one of the best movies. I saw it on an airplane like a few years ago. It's unbelievable. I think it's called Best of Enemies.
Best of Enemies. Okay, I'll write that down. Okay.
Because it actually goes through the process that they used to communicate, and literally the process is nothing more than putting you with that person and saying, "Go ahead," and you're like, so you want to leave. So you go through every emotion. If you're leading with anger, you'll yell at them and say, "You're disgusting," and "I can't believe you," and "I hate you." Eventually you get tired, you go to indifference. Eventually you're like, "Hey, you want something to drink? Oh, you like cookies? I got some cookies. What kind of those cookies?" And 2 minutes later, you're like, "Oh, how are your kids? Oh, you got kids?" And all of a sudden, a month in, they're like, "Oh, you're a human." And it's like, well, yeah, dude, of course I'm a human.
Yeah.
And that's what I think right now, we're essentially the macro to that micro to that movie. We are awakening. We're in that. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of sadness. There's a lot of disgust. There's a lot of frustration. Even these people looting, whether they're actual protesters or they're doing, they're infiltrating.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whatever, but it doesn't matter who they are. These emotions are at the pinnacle right now of where they're at. This is the opportunity to move through those and have the discussions. And that's why I asked you, because we're all going to be doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. We are not going to let the media, we're not going to let the leaders, we're not going to let them continue to put something else in front of us so this conversation goes away. Because this conversation, whoever hasn't wanted this for the longest time, whoever has created, putting drugs out there to make sure this group gets destroyed by drugs, or making marijuana the drug of the liberal, we've seen all that. We know how that works. Right. We're at a time right now where somehow we've gotten to the place that people think this is the worst time ever. Mm-hmm. They're missing the point. The point is, there's bad things that happened, and we're waking up together. The fact that we're all talking about this and we're not just playing hoops together or hanging out and having fun, that we're stopping everything to have this conversation. Yeah. We're not the only one. There's probably 500 shows, 1,000 shows going on doing the same thing right now to different audiences with the same topic.
Yeah, that's why I didn't hesitate to come on, Scott. You're spot on. I got to watch that movie, and there's a lot of people that are really voicing their hurt, their anger, they're channeling. But it's how we channel that anger, right? Peaceful protest is part of the solution. Going to the voting polls is part of the solution, but those are not going to be the solutions, individually. If we actually do those by themselves, that is not going to be the collective solution. The collective solution, as I mentioned, I want to really stress this. At the end of the day, all this is about reform. Like, we have to change the way we have done things, and otherwise you begin this learned behavior, just as you teach a dog how to sit and bark, right? You have to go through something that's different than you have been doing. Otherwise, you repeat that cycle. Mm-hmm. So
we have a question here. She says, Christy Jones, thank you, Christy, for being here. Love you. Arvin, what advice do you have for schools?
And what can you elaborate on that? And what do you mean by what advice do you have for schools?
I know Christy, and probably take her a second to respond, but I'm going to assume the whole equity discussion. I'm going to assume where she's going is, you've got Westlake, and we're told there's equity in schooling, and then we've got schools in, Mendez and Dove Springs, like Mendez and Westlake Middle School. There's no equity in education. I've worked in both. It's not true.
Yeah.
So what do we do about schools?
That's a tough one, because a simple response to me is this started well before today, right? So how the lines are divided in a city is based on your city council, is based on your how a city is drawn out when you do zoning and you do rezoning. And we know we're in Austin right now. So as I mentioned, I'm currently broadcasting from BK area, so near Lake Travis. This area doesn't have a lot of blacks here, right? It's a lot of money here, a lot of whites, but a lot of also foreigners who are moving to Austin in these areas. But if you look at the I-35 corridor and how it's split, right? Typically on the east side of I-35, you're typically going to have lower in economic value or lower economic wages, people in lower jobs. On the west side, it's just how this city's been kind of mapped out. But I can't put my finger on, and then this also results in how the schools get funded, And so if you have more dollars that are being put into these zones, obviously those schools are going to get more private and public. I wouldn't say public, but definitely a lot more support in the communities for those schools. And then you have the private schools, right? And so you have private schools that are not necessarily tied to public dollars, but they're tied to the private donors who are typically tend to be in those same zones where you have most of the fundings. So I don't know the answer as it relates to every school in every single state, but I know the first start is that we all recognize how our lines are divided in our cities. So if we want to make change, is to make sure you are present and you are active in those council meetings, and not just speaking on it, but being part of that. Run for council office. It's not that rocket science. I'm not downing the people or undermining the people in those roles, because they are very experienced people. But starting at the local level, if you're passionate about something you really believe in and you got the people behind you, then that's where you can start support someone who can start changing those zoning laws and making sure we get more funding. But it's a very complex process. You need people who understand the makeup of how this all works, because it can't just happen with one or two people. You have to have a coalition. You have to have people who can come in and actually be on the ground with their boots strapped and making those changes. So again, this is not something that happens overnight. Austin is a huge tech city. And so you have all these companies that are bringing in people from all over the world, the Googles, the Apples, the Facebooks, right? And so when you get a city with this infiltration of tech talent and people from all over, well, those companies now drive a lot of the decisions in how certain communities get built up. And some people feel like, you know what, that's overwhelming. I can't be a part of that. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. When in reality, it takes 100 people or more to go to these city councils and make a voice. And you can make change by going to the city councilman meetings and making sure that you vote on the things that's going to protect those zones.
So Arvin, here's a thought too, because I'm visualizing.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, because that's new to me too.
So I'm hearing that loud and clear, and I'm visualizing Austin, and I'm thinking of some of the issues that we've got in this town.
Yeah.
So we've had that, and just for everybody who's listening, Austin's very segregated in the sense, way back when, east of 35 was literally black and Hispanic, and west of 35 was white. And so, of course, through gentrification and build out, people want to be close to town. There's gentrification occurring, and a lot of those communities are getting disbanded. So what I'm seeing in this town, and I'm sure this is pretty similar in many towns, once you get that gentrification setting in and all these warehouse districts and whatever become, rich white areas, people feel unsafe. You know, you're going to lose your home, you're going to lose your area when there's no safety. And you know, we can go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we're sitting in the down physiological needs and safety, both emotional and physical. When those needs aren't met, which I see in some of the Black and Hispanic communities east of Austin, when those needs are not met, and then you integrate schools, because like what you were talking about, they were trying to do that in Austin. So we were going to have west to east was going to be the zoning. So we would have had Southwest Austin, Circle C, and Dove Springs in the same exact school.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine like, and here's what I'm trying to figure out, because this is a very serious question. If they did that in day one in a middle school, where my daughter, who's never seen kids getting high and never seen kids swearing, you know, I'm the only one who's probably heard swear. I go into Dove Springs and there's kids in gangs and there's kids smoking pot, kids bringing weapons. Suddenly they're in school together. And so here's what I'm trying to figure out is I have programs that I want these kids to be in school together. What do we do? Because this is the real thing right now. We're going to grow up with another generation of kids who don't feel safe from this group, kids who feel safe in this group and say, I don't want to be around them because they make me feel unsafe. When, where, and how do we bring all those kids together? Because I've been trying to answer this question like crazy. You know, I'm going to bring my Go Love Now program into schools, and I tell everyone to love each other. Yeah. But then they go back into a home. One feels safe and one doesn't. What do we do with that?
It's the economic disparity. And
I agree.
If you really look at it, and I can relate to this growing up in Montgomery. Montgomery back in the 70s was extremely segregated. You had, and I'll just say it, you had the Black side of town and you had the white side of town, you know, sure. And as I got older, you know, that became more integrated with the ability to buy homes and so forth. But a lot of what we see came from years and years ago of those communities being designed and developed in order to make sure that people were, I would say in Montgomery for sure, there were certain communities that were specifically designed for low income, right? And so those people that lived in the low income, unfortunately, most of them were Black in the city that I grew up in. And so whether or not you look at it as black and white, at the end of the day, Blacks lived in the lower income areas and whites lived in the areas where there were better neighborhoods. And anytime Blacks would move into an area, whites would move out and start moving into other areas. It's been that way as growing up as a kid. I saw it in my teen years, and I see it still today as people start to move further and further out as Blacks move in or Hispanics move in. Why is that? It's the stigma, again, that I went back to at the beginning of this. It's labeling, right? It's the economic. I go back to this all the time. If the Hispanics, and I'm just going to use this hypothetically, it's nothing that I'm using as example. Let's say that the Hispanics and the Asians collectively got together and pooled all their money together. And you have the Blacks and the whites to collectively pool all their money together, right? Now you got these two groups with two different race groups, right? But now we put all the money together. Well, guess what? I'm going to like you a lot more because our money is fighting now for the same thing, right? Same thing here. Now we've drawn the line. We've taken the line away from the color of my skin and where I was born. My money now speaks much more than the color of my skin. And so that is where I feel like a lot of communities that are being funded, they're not taken into account of those other groups of people that are lower income. So you have Hispanics, you have African-American who in most cases in Austin have grew up in more of the lower income communities. And how do you get them to be able to have the same fair, equitable, I would say the same fair and equitable chance of getting real estate and homes? So you can have the same credit score, you can have the same income level, but at the end of the day, the people who turn these loans around typically will make sure that, you know, the people that they know, and I'm not calling any race card here, but over time, that's what I have seen in my lifetime as an adult. Even when I'm purchasing a home, I've been denied 2 times for a loan. I don't know why. I mean, my income is great, but then another person over here gives me a loan. So it's something going on behind the scenes where it's taking me 3 months to get a loan, where my same friend who makes less than me and his credit score is lower than mine, he gets a loan in 5 days. So what the hell is that about? You know, I don't know.
Can you just say it?
I don't know. I can't call if it's a race thing or not. I just know this is part of the systemic injustice that I know based on the color of my skin and probably my voice. I don't mind sharing my opinion about things. And many times people get in maybe anxious, or I don't want that type of energy in my, you know, whatever. But I'm always going to speak my raw mind about how I feel about things, but I'm going to do it in a way that's professional. I'll do it in a way where I'm not disrespecting anyone, but it is what I decide that if I am doing this, that I have a plan to make sure that I'm backing it up. And so going back to economic equality, schools, the resources in our communities, new areas that are being torn. I mean, old communities that are being torn down and regentrified with new uprising. Well, guess what? The people now coming in from other places get to take that spot where that person used to live and paid, you know, $500 a month for rent. Now that same place is $2,000 a rent because it's in a new place. Where are those people moving now? They're moving further and further away out of these zones. And so now when you get this new money in, the zones now start to either change or collapse, or they expand out with other supporters that's fueling more dollars. Because guess what? Now, if you look at real estate, if I'm moving to Austin, I'm going to look at, okay, what are the best schools I should live in? What has the lowest crime rate? What has, these are factors that people look at when they go buy homes anywhere. And so if it's an area where there's high crime, well, I'm probably not going to want to live there because I don't feel safe. But unfortunately, those places have been designed based on systemic injustice.
I would absolutely understand that. I mean, what you were saying was interesting, Arvin, and thank you for sharing that, because when I grew up in Inglewood here in Southern California, and when my mom told me when we first were there back in 1969, when I was born, that it was predominantly a white neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And over the 6 years that I lived there, it transformed into a black neighborhood. I mean, we were the only white family on 110th Street. And that's one of the reasons why we had to move out, was because I was getting picked on. It was like, I didn't even understand it in my situation. But in seeing that, you know, you do get pushed out, or things do change. And I think there was a question. Oh, Tricia did. I don't have any kids. I see a lot of low-income schools here, not many black, but what we are teaching along the lines of history of tolerance. How does a redneck town educate tolerance for something they never witness?
Wow. That's a great question. A very good question.
One by one, I would say, I would answer to be one by one, get involved. I mean, start educating, start listening. I mean, that's the thing that I think we've been saying about this since we started this, was listen and understand and seek first to understand and then to be understood, and to change those things around. And I think by what you said, looking at the demographics of the people that are rising up, it is the younger generation. So perhaps that younger generation could start pounding into some of these old people's heads and say, listen, you little fucker, stop thinking the way you did just because your dad told you to think that way 40 years ago. Open your mind and see things. I've seen people go through transformations in my time of knowing them, where I found out that they were a little bit like, you know, not racist, but they had judgment and they had concern and all this other shit. Through me talking to them and sharing my friends with them, they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, shut up, man. I said, I'm more worried about half the white people in the fucking country than I am everybody else.
Right.
You were shocked. Other people have been shocked about me saying that. You know?
I think it has a lot to do with trust also, right? So I'm just reading this comment. How does a redneck town educate tolerance for something they never witnessed? Wow. So I don't even know what a redneck is, to be honest with you. I can only tell you from my experience growing up, I've heard the term redneck. I don't know where it actually derived from. And so when that term is thrown out, I don't want to automatically assume it's a white person. I'm pretty sure it's probably, it's a phrase. Again, these are the labels and the things that people come up with to define maybe a group of people that act a certain way. But I would challenge to go in any community and let's have a beer. I don't even drink beer, but let's sit down. Let's sit down on your front porch. Hey, let's have real talk like we're having right here, Scott, right? Drop the inferior, like fear, right? Like drop that for a moment. If a Black person moved into my community where I live today, right? I want to have a conversation. I want to know like who they are in my neighborhood. If a white person came in, I don't want them to fear me and I don't want to fear them. I want to have a conversation with them. But I never want to also, create fear. So sometimes silence just creates fear and anxiety. You say, oh, I'm not going to talk to my neighbor. Like, what are they doing over there? And then when you're leaving, they open the blind and they're like, oh, he's leaving now. Right? He's going to work. I wonder if he works for. He's always dressed up in a suit. He must have a fancy job. Oh, he's driving in that nice car. Like these are the kind of things we don't even know the person. You don't have any clue what their lives are, but we make these prejudgments. We put labels on people because of what we think they are versus who they truly are. I say tear that shit down and open up your front door. A lot like the old school days, we had a front porch with 2 rocking chairs and a swing bench. Like if you walk down the street, you're going to know your neighbor. People don't do that anymore. At least not where I live, I don't know. It's just not the same community that we used to have because people don't trust each other anymore.
I'd like to throw something in on there too, because, to that question, it's a great question. How does somebody from, assuming like the country or whatever, doesn't go into an inner city, doesn't see a mix of people, if they're in a space where they never see it, it's like anything else. I mean, experiential learning is the best learning. So I would say this, literally understand this. And this is what I would teach kids if I had kids and I was in the country. I would say this, everybody's feelings are real.
Yeah. Period.
So when you feel angry, you feel sadness in response to something. When you sit here and hear, well, in Chicago, Blacks are killing Blacks. Yeah. Okay. And so Blacks must be scary because they're killing each other. So if they can't live together, then that's it. We know that's the Fox News narrative. Blacks are killing Blacks. And we're going to use Chicago till we're blue in the face. Right. And here's the simple truth. Okay. You've already explained some reasons where people don't trust each other. They haven't built up that camaraderie, and that's part of systemic racism. But don't listen to the story. Listen to the people. We can go on social media and listen to a story. If somebody says, I feel hurt, it takes me 45 minutes to be pulled over by a cop. It takes my friend 5. I'm scared. I don't know what to tell my kids. Those are very real feelings. Right. Right. So I would suggest, in my answer to that question, being white, Black, or anybody, I would tell people that feelings are real, period. So listen to people expressing feelings. Don't look at people in the extremes. Don't look at somebody who killed somebody or went to the next length, or don't listen to the person who's the apologist. Sit in the middle and say, if I don't feel good about something, and then ask yourself, can you be part of that solution? That's it. Yeah. I don't think there's rocket science behind this. Right. I think we take extremes in the narrative and we fall in love with that because then we can sit here and justify our fears, and we love to justify. Yeah. We say the same thing. If this is a cup filled with love and fear, that fear seems to always want to rise to the top. But once we work through that and we say, okay, well, Black people aren't scary. I'm friends with Arvin. Oh, Arvin's brother's fun, or Arvin's sister's fun, or Arvin, all of a sudden we know 5 Black people and 10. We don't like to do that. We like to sit here and stay in our illusion of comfort. Yeah. And so I would literally just stick with that. Just feelings. Respect people's feelings. Yeah. Period. Yeah. I agree. Wholeheartedly. So, I love each one of you guys, man.
I have one last question for you, Arvin.
Yes, sir.
And again, thank you so very much for coming on here and being so direct and so honest and so transparent and so loving. That's what I see in your heart. I see love. And that's one thing we've been talking about a lot lately is love. Love is unity. And, and that starts with ourselves and starts loving with ourselves. what if you had like every TV on right now and you were able to get a message out to somebody, what would you want to say? I mean, we've talked about voting, we talked about all these different things, but what message in your heart, what is like the main thing that you just really want to get across to all of us tonight in how we're changing the world and how we're shifting and whatever is on your mind? What do you want to share? I mean, like really just like free flow, whatever comes to your mind.
Yeah. Thank you. I say fight for what you believe in. Like, don't sit and allow things to bypass and not your voice be heard. And I don't mean that always being vocal with your voice as in I'm going to shout out, meaning vocal as take action on something that you believe in. And I said this earlier, you know, when you don't take a stance for something that you believe in, you're part of the problem. And when you are silent and when you know there are things going on, it is your duty. It is your responsibility. We're all living and breathing the same air. We kind of like to sit back and kind of let things pass over, do our things, drink our Mai Tai, and like, oh, it'll pass over. Just, oh, they're all the bickering and stuff. But to be honest with you, you know, we've got to this point because of silence. We've got to this point because people have been afraid. And I understand there's fear injected to have your voice. There are risks that you feel like you're taking in order to do that. But there are people that rely on us as parents, as educators, as professionals, as business owners, as leaders in our community. They rely on us. If we don't speak, guess what? They're not going to speak. We have to have a voice. I don't care what side you're on. Just have a voice. You know, have a voice and be passionate about what you believe in. And that's why I said, when you talked about the KKK, I really want to be very clear. I don't support their initiatives, but just take a group that is very right or left minded, right? You can be out of your mind wacky, or you can be out of your mind passionate, or both, right? But they're standing for something. It's wrong as hell. I don't support them, but they're collective. Why? If you could do the same thing and turn that to positive, oh my gosh, can you imagine what kind of world we would live in today? Can you imagine? Like, I still dream one day we're going to wake up and all this is going to be like just it's going to go away. I've dreamed about this like 4 or 5 times in my lifetime. It never went away, but I still have hope. I still have belief that it will. And I see change happening, but it's not going to change until you change.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Yes. Thank you. Shane, our illustrious leader, says, as a leader with a media platform, how can I or we help our communities to be receptive to the change and healing that is needed? With a media platform. Shane actually is the founder of Speaking to the Heart podcast network. So he's coming at it from a standpoint of how can he use that further platform, I think, to make the change. Yeah,
I saw that question earlier. Can you put that back up again? Sorry. Sure. I think I was reading Christy Jones. Okay, as a leader with a media platform, how can I or we, our communities, to be receptive to the change? Okay. Do what we're doing here. This is a $60 mic. These guys have mics. You don't really need that, really, to be honest with you. But if you do this every day, you know, it's probably good. But if you have a media platform, I say start. Just start. Don't be perfect. Don't try to be perfect, right? Bring awareness to the people that listen to you, and be a voice that's transparent, that's open, and that is okay to share from the heart. Because to me, that is what's needed. It's these grassroots efforts right here. That's why I didn't hesitate to come on this show on a Friday night. You know, there's Netflix and dinner right now, but Scott and Christopher, I would do it in a heartbeat again if you ask me. But one of the things I say is start the conversation, even if it's with 3 people or 2 people.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Scott, any other questions floating in that brilliant mind of yours?
The last thing I'll add again is one of the things that Arvin said that I'm always processing like rapid fire. And, you know, my initial take, of course, with the KKK being able to share their voice, it seemed very hate-filled. But listen to a black man in America say, if they didn't bring a message of hate in that moment, but they organized and they're speaking, it really got me processing, because I was visualizing being a child in school. And, you know, the teachers, if you were the troublemaker, some of the teachers said the kid's a troublemaker and that's it. And other teachers said, wait a minute, he's a leader. If we could turn him, what does he look like? And that's a lot of my life. There's times where I led and did things that weren't the best things in the world. And now I'd like to say that the things I'm doing are very good. So I don't know, I'm quite the spin KKK to speaking good, but the point being is, I'm really visualizing, are you more scared of somebody who's hiding and not speaking with animosity and anger and hate, or somebody who's speaking and now you can create the conversation? So yeah, that the one thing I want to end with my thought is, thank you for sharing that, because now you've got my mind spinning, because I was leaning one way and I was holding ownership of, hell no, they shouldn't speak. And now I'm going, you know,
that's right. That's where I was exactly conflicted.
What they say, keep your enemy as close to you as possible.
Yeah. So but you know what? With social media, you start getting beat down because you're trying to help and you're trying to serve. And sometimes the noise gets so loud, you just want to throw people away. And maybe that's the time that I need to stay the most focused. So thank you for helping refocus me to be in conversation with those that don't always make any sense to me.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you, Christopher. Appreciate it. Thanks.
You're welcome. No, you're welcome. No, thank you. No, seriously. This is a conversation that we intend on continuing, you know, through what it is that we're able to offer here with our platform, with our privilege, with our voice, with our community. I mean, the community came out in droves tonight. Thank you guys so much. I mean, engaging with us in the conversation and asking the tough questions and being here and being with us, really, you know, that's what happens. I mean, you start having these conversations, you go, hey, you know what? That's an interesting perspective. I did not consider that. I mean, even like I said myself, I've grown and learned through this process, and I thought I was enlightened. I thought I was like, okay, I got it all good. My brothers and sisters, we're good. But you know, you just got to continue evolving and continue listening. And it's people like yourselves that are so magnificent in the community to be able to come out here and have the balls and have the guts to stand up for what's right and what's fair. That's the thing that I had to think about. And that's the thing I've been espousing all week, is like, what did I want to get into this realm and this conversation? Yeah. But now I'm so happy that I did, because now we just collectively, people see me do it and go, well, maybe somebody sees Scott do it. Somebody sees Arvin do it. And all of a sudden they're breaking off and having their conversations. They're having their conversations. All of a sudden we overtake all this bullshit that's going on in the world. People go, you know what? Maybe I'm not going to watch Fox anymore. Maybe I'm going to watch Friday Night Live. Maybe I'm going to watch some other speakers. Maybe I'm going to watch a documentary and really learn about the 400 years that has gone on. Maybe I'm going to really dig into the fact of what everybody's been through and what I can do to contribute. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to thank your audience too. This is like me coming to your house, Scott and Christopher, and you know, we're just sitting around having a chat about like real world stuff. And these are kind of dialogues that they're healthy dialogues, because I know that I'm not always going to agree with you or with you, Christopher, but having this dialogue, what it does, it makes you think differently. It makes you have a different perspective. It makes you maybe not change the way you view things, but it may give you a different lens on how you approach things in life. And so I do appreciate the time to speak with your community. I really do.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Always welcome. How do you want to end this one, Scott? I mean, usually we kind of just, I don't know.
I'm just going to end it really simple from my perspective is I literally love you guys, and I felt one of the things that I think I said to start this is we were talking about, we've got, and I don't know if you heard this part, Arvin, but I was talking about the idea that we live in the conscious mind, but we are operating from the subconscious mind, and the superconscious is the divinity. And what I really wanted to do tonight was remove a little bit, like I said, clean a little bit of the lens of the subconscious. And honestly, I felt it happened multiple times to include the final point that you just shared. You know, you made me rethink something. So literally, I just removed a little bit of the distortion of my lens, and I'm hoping that somebody did the same. And I, you mentioned it briefly, but I listened closly. You said, you know, your mom's the one who brought the positivity. And the whole time I was listening to you talk, I was looking at places where I might have gone in a different direction. And I'm sitting in your mind with you. And I'm like, that's his mom speaking. I don't know her, but that's his mom speaking. And it was very well articulated. And you had beautiful pauses. And I can't wait to hear you continue to share messages. And I just want all of us to do the same. And I love you both. And I really appreciate the chance to be with all of us tonight and our audience too. So
yeah, God bless both of you guys, man. Love you both.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys. Don't go anywhere, guys. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, 2 hours and 19 minutes of a conversation that we just had publicly in front of probably hundreds and thousands of people. Hopefully this will be shared and really listened to, because these two fine gentlemen and myself come to you with open hearts. We come to you with, you know, as my coach would say, open kimono. You know, and it's about, you know, continuing these conversations, continue your research, go out there and learn these things and have conversations, you know, invite people into your house, you know, have it more of a community. And just like Arvin said, you know, it starts with you. It starts with me. It starts with everybody in the fact that there's the momentum in this world right now, and we cannot lose that momentum, and to keep fighting and to keep pursuing. And I love what Arvin said about looking at the businesses that you purchase from. You know, start making those decisions, because if all of us at all the same time in all of the world are going to make those decisions, then guess what? Change will happen, shift will happen, momentum will happen. And we'll look back at this, you know, in years and like, okay, wow, you know, we shifted some of the policies and the laws and everything else by the fact that we just stood up and raised our voice and said, listen, let's be part of the solution and not be part of the problem. You know, you guys have heard me say that so many times. And, you know, just for myself and Scott and most especially Arvin, thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for sharing this. Thank you guys for communicating and asking the questions and really being a part of the solution and supporting what Scott and I are so passionately believing in, as well as what the Speaking to the Heart podcast network is about. You know, look for changes in this. Look at the expansion of the conversations and the shows that we're going to have on here, potentially in addressing these things and continuing the conversation for Latino community. I saw my friend Jose Morera on here. He was talking about that with me the other day. I'm going to have Jose on my show. So just continue having these conversations. Don't let it be like, oh, okay, like, you know, we're saying, you know, what's COVID-2 or what's, you know, the Hornets or whatever fucking bullshit they're going to come up with next. You know, just be a part of that solution and just love on yourself, love on your family, and just realize the legacy that you get to leave is your choice. And you can look back on this time and go, wow, I was a part of something massive. I was part of something that helped create a new world for my kids and for the next generation. You know, as far as, you know, everything else we're trying to do and save the planet and everything else, we all have a choice and a voice in that. Don't be lazy. Don't be complacent. Don't expect other people to do it, because at the end of the day, that's why we're here. We're having this existence to be a part of something huge. And I just encourage you guys to do that. And if you have any questions, if you have any things you want to talk about privately, please reach out to us, myself, Scott, and Arvin, and ask those questions, have those conversations, friend request him and say, hey, listen, you know, I love that show. You know, what else can I learn? Subscribe to other people's podcast. All right. My voice is hoarse. I'm exhausted mentally and physically. You guys are all just phenomenal. And I thank you so much. And I know, we'll see you next time, and, just please be safe. Please, you know, continue to stand up and voice your opinion and continue to be kick ass. We love you guys, and we will see you next time. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. We love you. Thank you.